The tragedy of Yemen is being silenced by almost all mainstream media in the world in a very sophisticated and coordinated way, despite the outrageous figures and data about the daily suffering of an entire people for the last 6 years. It's worth seeing on this occasion the dirty games that have long been played on the backs of these people of a country with more than 28 million population, often portrayed as the poorest in the Arabian Peninsula, although it has one of the most enviable strategic positions for international shipping and multinational monopolies. The so-called Gate of Tears, the area where the country is located, off coast of Eritrea and Djibouti, where interestingly the US, the French, and lately also the Chinese have foreign military bases, is connected also to the Red Sea and to the Suez Canal. In addition, Yemen's proximity to the north of Saudi Arabia and to the east of Oman often places the country in the context of regional conflicts and intense competition. The 2015 international aggression on Iran's nuclear program and other Gulf countries, which have benefited from years of international sanctions to the detriment of their competitor, both in terms of oil exports and sales, as well as their geopolitical influence in the wider region to the benefit of their monopoly interests. The overthrow of Yemeni President Saleh in 2011 in the context of the so-called Arab Spring brought a pro-Western President Hadi to power until autumn 2014, when the latter was overthrown by Shiite opposition Houthis, which were supported also by Iran. Hadi, who was supported until his election by the reactionary Gulf monarchies, sought refuge in Saudi Arabia, which under the pretext of restoring so-called the rule of law, launched an imperialist intervention in March 2015 under the name Operation Decisive Storm, which was later renamed euphemistically Operation Restoration of Hope. In those almost 6 years, the Saudis, with the cooperation of most of the Gulf countries, except Oman, and later due to the regional rivalry with Qatar, but also American and European imperialists in water, electricity, production units, agricultural production, and education. An entire generation of Yemeni children has suffered the traumas of war, many of them orphaned, malnourished, or displaced. The United Nations reports a death toll of 100,000 people in the ongoing war, with an additional 131,000 people dying from hunger, disease, and the lack of medical care. More than 4 million people have been internally displaced, and the worst cholera outbreak ever recorded has infected 2.3 million and has cost already 4,000 lives. Attacks on hospitals and clinics have led to the closure of more than half of Yemen's pre-war facilities. Yemen remains, according to the UN, the world's worst humanitarian disaster, according to the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Nearly 80% of the population requires some form of humanitarian assistance and protection. If we project all these to the conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic, the country is totally exposed without the slightest protection for its people in terms of treatment, and much less the perspective for the vaccine in near future. The war started under the Obama administration, as we all know, but President Trump doubled down on Obama's support for the Saudis' war. The US used the pretext of Iran's support to the Houthis and ignored, of course, Saudi bombings of schools and hospitals. The Saudis' war is very $50 billion per year. It is disastrously devastating for Yemen, and it is also a strategic plus for Iran. British arms sales to Saudi Arabia increased by 11,000% in the 3 months following the start of the bombing in March 2015, which means from 9 million pounds to 1 billion pounds within 3 months only. A very good business. Half of the Saudi Royal Air Force is made out of military aircraft supplied by the UK. The Royal Saudi Air Force cannot operate without American and British support. The presence of British special forces in Yemen, although not officially acknowledged, has become an open secret in defense circles. All over the country, there are additionally also mercenary of the so-called security belt mercenaries, which are linked to Al-Qaeda or to the Islamic State, which continue to operate in southern and central Yemen, giving, of course, also the proper pretext for the action of US and British and other European imperialists in their intervention. Even the temporary decreased weapons exports some years ago from the Germany's exports, and the US have increased the arms sales again recently. It is clear and obvious that the imperialists, despite their own internal competition, have a clear view when it comes to Yemen, like it happens in the case of Libya since 2011 and the imperialist intervention in Syria. Their purpose and aim is to create the fruitful conditions for the control of energy resources, the roads of transport, the pipelines, and to pursue violent regime changes, imposing willing allies and puppets for their interests. Their hypocrisy and cynicism is paramount. A small example from my country, which shows the coordinated efforts of all NATO states, even of the governments of the European Union, is the case where the Greek government, in the framework of its strategic partnership with the US, sent Patriot missiles, Greek Patriot missiles, which were bought by Greece, to Saudi Arabia. But allow me to comment on the role of the UN in this matter of Yemen. Of the United Nations on Yemen some years ago shows the manner the UN is dealing with the crime committed against the people of Yemen. A British diplomat who has served in similar positions also in the imperialist wars in Afghanistan, in Libya and Syria, is being asked to serve peace in Yemen from a country which is fueling the war machines, from which his country makes huge profits, is asked to apply international law. The additional so-called qualities of this UN envoy, the fact that he has worked with NGOs, who, not real NGOs, who benefit as well from the imperialist aggressions, is just the other side of the same coin. The recent attempt of the outgoing US Secretary of State Pompeo to label the Houthis as foreign terrorist group is taking place in the framework of the negotiations and games to divide Yemen, maybe into north and south, with a control in the north by Saudi Arabia and the south by United Arab Emirates, which of course will not solve the problem, it will only deteriorate. The entire region of the Middle East is the biggest hotspot, as we all know, in the world. Not by chance if we look at the rich reserves of oil and natural reserves and the geostrategical location. I want to stress that a key issue remains in this issue in the Middle East, the Palestinian issue. Without the solution of it, no solution can be found for the inalienable rights of people. Like they have the same root causes and the same enemy, whether it is the Palestinian people or the Yemeni people. As World Peace Council, we demand the end of the arms sales to Saudi Arabia, the withdrawal of all foreign military forces from the region, the end of the dirty war against the people of Yemen, the closure of all foreign military bases so that the peoples of the region can decide freely upon their destiny. Thank you very much.